Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the happy hours of coaching session. Once again, it's Friday evening, and very happy to be in the midst of all of you. And once again, coming back with another session, another topic, another session, another day. And the topic name is communities of practices. So a quick check with the participants. Are you aware about communities of practices? What exactly it is communities of practice? Anyone would like to, you can unmute yourself and talk now. Are you aware about what exactly is a community of practice? What exactly it is used for? Anyone here in the audience?
Yes, it is communities of practice where you, what you say, standardize the practices, come out to
Hmm.
identify the best practices, and so, from which
Okay.
you, so that all the, if it is agile or non-agile, any other execution where there is a standard way of executing based on, and also the
Hmm.
best practices learnings gets captured. Actually.
Okay, so the best practices learnings get captured, or basically you standardize some of the messaging of what you have. So that
The
is what
templatization
you're
and also
saying.
template, yeah.
Yeah, so basically it is mainly related to the standardization is what you are saying, right? I mean, standardization of messaging, standardization of practices. I mean, those are the things what you are saying. Okay,
Yeah,
great. Sorry.
yeah, that's what
Sorry.
I was trying to convey.
That's what you're saying, right, exactly. So yes, I mean, that is one part of communities of practices. Yes, that is one element or one part of communities of practices what we have. There is more to it, actually. There is more to it than just being, let us say, what we call it as a standardization. Of course, is one part of it. Okay, that is one part of community of practices, but there is more to it than just standardization, which is what we will try to understand in today's session. And yeah, just a quick introduction about myself, in case what we have. Okay, so COE is something different. Okay, COE is different. Okay, so let's not bring in COE here. COE is Center of Excellence. This is Community of Practice. Okay, so COE is something which is, although there are some overlaps between a COE and a COP, but COE is a different organization entity, mostly and horizontal in the organization. So thanks for pitching in, okay, Ranjit. Okay, thanks for quickly pitching in. And yeah, let us move ahead with the topic. Let us try to understand what exactly is a COP and what is the benefit of having a COP in the in our transformation. About myself, Ashutosh Bhatodekar here, working as an enterprise agile coach, a consultant, and a trainer. I run a community called Pune Agile Thought Leaders, through which we are running these webinars. I also have my YouTube channel where you will find almost 100 plus videos now. The count is increasing daily as we publish more content. So if you are interested, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. You will get a link of the YouTube channel as a part of the follow-up email of this session. And yeah, and I'm also available on WhatsApp. So if you need any coaching, one-to-one coaching, or you want to discuss any one-to-one coaching related activities, do connect with me one-on-one. So that's in brief about myself. And let us try to understand what exactly is a community of practice, right? So community, right? I mean, we all know communities, right? We have communities at our workplace. We have communities at our home, right? So we have communities at, I mean, at a club. Let's say I'm a member of a club. I'll be having a community which is there, wherein I meet regularly and we network and we discuss. So that is the definition of the word community, right? I mean, a group of people coming in together, right? For a cause. Obviously, there's a group of people who come together for a cause, is what we call as the community, is what we have, right? So that's the definition of community, what we call it. So what is community of practice? What exactly do we mean as a community of practice? So a group of people who come together, either there is a problem which has to be solved, or there is a concern which has to be removed, or basically there's an interest in the community. There's some degree of interest of what we have, right? And the objective is that at the end of it, this community helps them either achieve their individual goals, or it helps them achieve a group goal, right? That's the whole reason of having a community of practice, right? So like-minded people, they come together and they basically form a community of practice, who together basically fulfill either the individual goals or group goals. Now, if you look at it, if you take an example of banks, let us say, there are so many banks, whichever part of the world you are in, right? And all these banks, they compete with each other, right? You will find X bank is competing with a Y bank, and there's always a cutthroat competition between the two, right? We always see that happening. But moment you see, what happens many times is that these people also come in together. Okay, so these people also come in together at an industry forum. So you might find the CEO of the bank coming together, and basically they come together from an industry perspective. If there are any common concerns of the industry, they come in together and they highlight those common concerns to the government or to the finance ministry, right? Whichever is the organization structure in your country, they highlight those concerns to the respective government, right? So that is a community of practice of banking people. Similarly, you will find, let us say, steel industry, they come together and they raise their concerns, right? Why is the export duty so low, or why is the import duty so high, right? So obviously they come together and they raise a concern with the industry body or with the government of the day. They raise it, and then they get redressal around it. So basically it's a group of like-minded people coming together, and some of the areas where they exchange could be knowledge sharing. I might have some best practices which I will share it with you. Problem solving, we as a group are facing some real burning problem, so that is what we discuss. Idea sharing, some innovative ideas which we might want to share with each other, innovative practices, and some special interest groups, right? Some groups which bring about a transformation, right? So those are the things what we call as a community of practice, what we have as a part of this group which is there, right? A group of people. Now, when we all know the difference between a group and an individual, right? Again, remember, group cannot be of two people. Okay, group has to have a minimum of 3 people to start with, right? So that is what is the standard. I mean, this is the standard definition of a group, what we call it, right? So this is what is a community of practice, what we have. And obviously it is sometimes triggered by individuals, it is sometimes triggered by organizations, but at the end of the day, it's a practice which is there, right? I mean, it's a practice which we have as a part of this, right? So that's what we call it as a community of practice, is what we call it, right? Or a COP, as we popularly call it. Okay, let us understand some literature which has gone into this already. So Wenger is the author who has come out with this definition, and he talks about that for a COP to be successful, there are 3 elements which have to interact with each other. There needs to be a common domain, an area of application, or a shared interest. For example, I gave an example of banking industry, right? So obviously that will be a common interest which will be there. Banking as an organization, that will be one of the common interest. Practice, what is a way of working? What are the operating procedures, standard operating procedures, book of knowledge, body of knowledges, any industry standards, tools developed? So that will come under the practice. And the third and the most important one is it has to be a group of people, as I said, right? It cannot be just 2 people coming together and talking, right? It has to be a group. And nowadays, of course, there's a lot of talk on this group being as diverse as it can be, right? So are we having a diverse group, or are we having a group which is a very non-diverse group? That is something what we need to understand, right? I mean, the group has to be a very diverse group. Diversity, I mean, we all know nowadays, right? I mean, leaders are measured by the diversity index which they maintain in the organization. So that is the third important element which is their community, practice, and the domain, right? And this is reference from Wenger's community of practice is what we have. All right, let us try to understand now, when we talk about transformation, when we as coaches go into an organization where we are transforming the organization, where I can leverage this community of practice, or where I can go ahead and create this community of practice. Now, there are different types of community of practices which are there. And one of the very popular ones, and I'm sure many of you who are coaches will be knowing this already, is done through what we call as role-based community practice, community of practice. So what is this role-based community practice? Let us try to understand. So we all know that in our organizations, there will be many agile teams, right? There will be multitude of agile teams which would be there. And obviously, what I have done is a representative sample here, assuming that there are 3 teams which are working in an organization, which are agile team. We have various roles in those teams, be it a scrum master, be it a product owner, be it a developers. And by just a correction here, by developers, I mean QA as well as programmers. Both the elements come in as a part of developers which are there. Okay, it's a cross-functional team, what we say, right? Architects, DevSecOps or DevOps professional. So we have all these people who are a part and parcel of a agile team. So the horizontal row is an agile team which is there. I can create a community of practices straight line vertically, right? So all the scrum masters come together and form a COP. All the architects of the various teams, they come together and form the COP, right? All the developers come together and form the COP. And again, within developers, you can have, let us say, full stack developers coming, or let us say Java developers, then QA professionals. Vertically, they will be coming together and they will be doing the community, or they will be forming what is called as a community of practices which are there. Okay, and remember, each of this community of practices will be having a charter of work. So someone would be heading this community of practice. So one of the senior resources would be heading the Scrum Masters community of practice, and he or she will be basically be driving the COP. Okay, he or she will be driving the COP from the charter perspective. So there's a well-defined charter which is created. This charter will have typically short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals which are there. That is what the charter will be consisting of. And then this charter will basically be something which has to be actioned upon. Okay, so this is something which has to be actioned upon, and you will have to basically action this charter as a part of this exercise, right? So you'll have long-term goals, short-term goals, and medium-term goals which are there, which are a part of the charter which is there. So this is the easiest way. This is the most, I would say, commonly found community of practices which are there, and you cut across the roles basically. Okay, and later on I'll tell you about the cadence, what frequency should these COPs be meeting, who should be heading it, what should be the working agreement, etc. Now remember, when we talk about, it's very easy to say that, okay, form community of practices, but the biggest challenge comes during its implementation. So can anyone tell me, what do you think would be the biggest challenge in the community of practices moving along? What do you think would be the biggest challenge you will find? Anyone wants to speak? You can speak. I have unmuted you. What do you think will be the biggest challenge in rolling it off or making sure that it is consistently operating? Any ideas or any thoughts around it, in case you have worked in a community of practice or you have established one? Anyone would like to speak? And feel free to come on camera. Okay, I see a chat there. Agile mindset is a must. Not necessarily. I mean, I can have a community of practice even in a traditional waterfall project. The biggest constraint is time, because this is not related to your project, right? This is something which is a non-project work. This is something, an additional time you will have to spend, right? Apart from your Scrum, I mean, apart from the time which you have for your Scrum events, or apart from your time which you have for other events, you will have to have a dedicated time in order. If you're nominated as a member, you'll have to spend over and above your the project activities. You will have to spend time on establishing the community of practices, right? And many times I have seen that team members try to take a shortcut there. They say, oh, I'm busy today, I don't have time, right? Or I have this client deliverable which is coming. So basically, those are the things which takes precedence over devotion or dedication to this COP, right? So you might have a Scrum Masters community of practice, but as a coach, you will find that they have not met for last 3 months. Because every time they are setting up some meeting, either there's a Ganpati festival, there is a Christmas, there's a Eid, there's a client deliverable, there's Navratra, you name it, and a festival would be there, right? And they will come out with all sorts of reasons as to why they have not met. So the biggest asset or the biggest thing what you need is a commitment from everyone, that once, and that is where the charter is very important. So when you sign up for the charter includes the working agreement. The charter includes a kind of a commitment that yes, you will be delivering, you will be dedicating and delivering for the time for this community of practice which is there. So this is one of the biggest challenges what we see as a part of the COP event or as a part of the COP activities which are there. Okay, so this is one type or one way in which the COP can be constructed. As I said, there are a couple of ways in which COP can be constructed. Another way is a guild concept in Spotify. I'm not covering that here, but it's a guild concept, right? You know guild, right? I mean, a guild is a collection of resources across the tribe. So in a Spotify way of working, you have what is called as a chapter. A chapter is similar to this. Okay, chapter is similar to the structure which I have drawn here right now, or which you see here, but you also have a concept called as a guild. And a guild is something which crisscrosses. Okay, it is something which crisscrosses the tribe, is what we call as a guild which is there. So in Spotify, I mean, they don't call it as a community as such. I mean, they call it as what we call as a guild is what they call it. Okay, now one interesting thing, Spotify does not use the word model. Okay, so there's nothing called as Spotify model. They call it as a way of working. Okay, so it's more like a way of working, what we call it as a part of the Spotify way of working which is there. So they don't use the word guild. I mean, they don't use the word community, as I said. They use the word what is called as the Spotify. I mean, guild is the word what they use instead of the community, right? So that is something which is there in a Spotify way of working, or a Spotify. I would say, yeah, Spotify way of working is a better word to use as a part of this. So I don't know if anyone has worked in Spotify or worked as a Spotify kind of a engagement. Where you can actually see that I mean coming up, right? I mean that is something which is shown in the Spotify approach. Let me see if I can show you a quick slide on that, and then we will move ahead, and then we will try to understand what exactly are the other ways in which it can be done. Okay, yeah. So let us understand this as we go along, right? Yeah. So community. We are seeing what is a community. We are trying to understand what is the use of a community, right? What are the benefits of a community, what you have, and most importantly, what does the community stand for, right? As I said, there's a charter, there's a formal charter which is given to the community. And I mean, the team, again, it is a self-organization. It is all about self-organization. So the team, the chapter or the guild in Spotify, or let us say the community here, they will have to come out with what exactly they are going to work upon, right? I mean, it is they who will decide the charter. It is not something which is forced on them. Okay, they will be deciding this is the charter what we will be working upon, right? So that is what we call it. Yeah, I got the Spotify thing. So if you look at it, chapter is nothing but a community of practice. And then we have a concept of a guild. And see, guild, it's an amoeba-like structure which is happening, right? This is also another type of a community which is there, which cuts across a tribe for a special initiative. For example, you want to organize a hackathon in your company. So you will create a guild which will have members across the tribe. Just a quick side note, in Spotify, we have what is called as a squad. The squad comprises of members, and chapters are basically people of the same roles. Like all the scrum masters will form a chapter, all the product owners will form a chapter, pretty similar to the diagram which I showed earlier. And a guild is cutting across tribe, and a guild is for a special initiative. So so one interesting observation I'll tell you, and this is something which has come out because of COVID. One of the organizations, when they wanted to give vaccination for its employees, okay, the COVID-19 vaccination, they created a guild. They created a guild which cut across these various tribes, and that guild was responsible for this engagement for giving vaccination to the employees, right? So that's a interesting note which I wanted to share. But that is a guild, what we call it. So that's another way in which your community of practice can exist. Okay, so moving ahead, let us further try to understand what is the third way or what is the third type in which you can have a kind of a community of practice which can be created? So another way in which community of practice can be created is through work related activity. So if you look at it, there is no straight line path here. It is basically a kind of a different kinds of blocks which are there, and you bring in members from different teams to create such communities. For example, if I want to create a feature, I will create a cross-functional team involving a scrum master, a product owner, and a developers. If I want, let us say, an initiative related to constructing the architectural runway, maybe I will involve the architectures from 2 or more teams, and then also some team members who are enthusiastic, and I will create a community of practice. Again, this could be a short-lived community. This could be a medium term, from a longevity perspective, it can be a medium term, or it can be a long-term community which exists, right? But this is a community which is cutting across, which is slicing across the different agile teams. And it is something similar to the guild, which I told you, right? I mean, just a few minutes back, I showed you the picture of a guild. This is something similar to that, what we have. So this is on the basis of the work done. So let's say you want to come out with an automation strategy for the organization. You might create a community of practice or COP, which has team members and let us say automation testers, and let us say architects across the different agile teams. Or you might want to have a COP for coming out with a test tool to be brought in, right? So your organization is struggling with test tool, and you might want to create a community which cuts across, having members from different agile teams which are there. So that can be crisscross. Okay, so that is a crisscross team or a COP what you create. Okay, so that's another way of creating a COP, which is crisscrossing. And in fact, it is very interesting to work in such a community, because you get to know other perspective, you get to know how architects think, you get to know how automation testers think, you get to know how your DevSecOps professionals put on the thinking caps and think, right? So that's a very interesting way to come out and learn from. I mean, if you want to really build a T-shaped skill for yourself, this is the best kind of a COP you can have, right? Because you will learn from others, right? You're not only a part of, I mean, you know, as a Scrum Master, you know some of the good and the best practices which are there. But if you want to learn how product owners prioritize, or what is a thinking pattern for product owners, then this is a best kind of a community to have a membership for, right? I will strongly vouch for this kind of a COP, because the benefit of this kind of a COP is that you actually learn the other skills. You actually learn how other people think, and you actually learn how other people are basically applying these techniques in their day-to-day life, right? I mean, so a lot of learning, I would say, from this kind of a COP structure which is there. Okay, yeah. So let us move ahead. Yeah, so we have seen a couple of COP structures which are there, and now let us try to understand how do these COPs operate. Okay, how do these operate? So usually you will find, I mean, what I have done here is I've listed 4 community of practices: one for Scrum Master, one for product owner, one for let us say architects, and one for let us say DevOps professional. And each community is flexible enough to decide what will be their meeting cadence. Would they like to meet on a weekly basis? Would they like to meet on a fortnightly basis or on a monthly basis? This is something which each community of practice, let's leave it to the community of practice, rather than we dictating them that no, you have to meet every 15 days or you have to meet every week. Let the team decide. Initially, what I have seen usually is, to start with, we do it fortnightly. And then once things have stabilized, we convert it into a monthly kind of a cadence. That is normal practice, what I have seen as a coach, is what I have seen, right? So that's the meeting cadence. It is usually headed by one of the very senior persons. I mean, again, not that it cannot be headed by a junior person, don't get me wrong, but usually someone who has an experience of community of practice. I would put it in that way. Doesn't mean that the most experienced Scrum Master will always head it, okay? It could be a person who has been a member in the past COP. You can, this person can head this COP which is there. And they have a charter, as I said. They have a working agreement and a charter. The charter clearly defines the roadmap where this community is headed to. Like, what are the 30-60? They typically have a 30-60-90 roadmap. What we are going to do in next 30 days, what we are going to do in next 60 days, and what is our objective to do in next 90 days. So they usually have a 30-60-90 kind of a roadmap. with the status check. So whenever they meet, they do a status check. Okay, what's happening? Where are we? Are we in line in meeting the goals what we set out last time, or is there any changes to the goal, or what exactly are we doing, right? So generally speaking, community of practice will have 60 to 70% of time for new initiatives, 20 to 30% for ideas exchange. This also acts as a forum when there is a community of practice meeting. This we usually say that, okay, you first start with what are some new innovative things you have done since the last meeting, and share it with the entire group. Okay, and then the exchange or idea exchange actually happens. But it is also a kind of a check that how are the various initiatives, and there are different ways in which these initiatives can be done. They can be done through key performance indicators. They can be done through OKRs, objectives, and key results. There are different ways in which these status check can be done, or this basically this whether the COP is moving in the right direction or not. One strong recommendation I always give as a coaching tip is that at periodic intervals, the COP should have a common session. Usually, I recommend once a 6 months. Okay, once a 6 months, I mean, all the COPs, now there are again variations to it. Either you can have a structure like this, which I have drawn, where all the communities have a common meeting, or you can say something like this: these two meet once, then these two meet, then probably these two meet, then these two meet. So basically, we call it as a rolling action, right? So first, Scrum Master and product owner, there is a common cadence. Then product owner and let us say architect, they meet for a common cadence. Then architect and DevSecOps, then DevSecOps and Scrum Master. We can do it in a circular referencing also. Or you can have a big bang. So usually when you do a big bang kind of a thing, right, it is not a boring meeting what you have, right? Because there will be too many members, right? And that is a question which I was expecting. People will ask that, oh, if so many people come together, what will they do? I mean, that meeting will be chaos. Usually we have an event here. Usually we have an event which is organized where all these communities come and present. So it could be an hackathon. It could be an agile day. You could have an agile day in the organization. You could have an agile, let's say, agile initiative, or let us say some kind of a event internal, or it could be an internal event. It could be a mix of internal and external event where you call an external speaker also outside the organization, and that could be a common cadence. So it's not a meeting. Okay, I'm just reiterating, this is not a meeting where there are 100 people who are there in that meeting and discussing, and then there's a total chaos. No, it could be an agile day, it could be a DevOps day, it could be an automation day. I mean, you can name it anything with a particular theme around it, where all these people contribute, all these communities. So it's an event by the community, for the community, of the community, right? So all the communities come together, merged together for that 1 or 2 day event. They bring in industry speaker, and then they again disperse back. Okay, so that is one strong recommendation I have a common cadence across these communities which is there. Okay, and what exactly is the outcome of having all this? Now, I think that is a question which I think everyone would be having, right? So obviously, communities are used for sharing best practices, and I've just listed some of the best practices which each community can bring in. Like a Scrum team can bring in about what is the standard estimation approach which can be followed in the organization. A product team might bring in, okay, what kind of prioritization technique would work in our organization. Architecture team could bring about some best practices or literature around scalable architecture. DevSecOps teams could bring about something related to the CI/CD pipeline which is there. I mean, this is just an indicative list. This is not a final list, but just a kind of an indicative list as to what can be the outcomes of a community of practices. And I firmly believe that every community of practice will have an inside out outcome. What is inside out? There are some things which you will learn from each other. There are some things from your community which will go to the outside world, right? And when I say inside out, it could be to the larger organization. It could be outside your organization. So it definitely leads to improved communication. I mean, you tend to create that cross-functional team. You come to know people across the other communities. So it's definitely leads to improved communication, better collaboration, right? We are in a better position to collaborate with all the stakeholders, and a higher visibility, right? Overall, a very, very high visibility about practices, any knowledge sharing initiatives, etc. So those are some of the critical advantages, I would say, from a community of practice perspective, right? Of course, there are many advantages. I have just tried to list some of the key advantages of your community of practice. Okay, now what kind of people can become members of a COP? Okay, let us try to understand. Is it every Scrum Master who is a member, or is there something like we have in United Nations, right? There are some permanent members of the Security Council, and then there are members who come on rotation, right? Some countries come on rotation, right? There's a rotation policy which is there, right? So something similar, right? Are all these members permanent members, or are these members kind of a floating population which is there? So let us also try to understand that that who community. So they are the heart of the community. So typically you'll find Scrum Masters being a part of the Scrum Master community, product owners being a part of the PO community, right? Architects being a part of architectural community, and they are the permanent members. It is expected that they contribute extensively to the community building. At least the core members cannot come out with a reason that, oh, I was busy in my project delivery, or you know what, I was busy in the client call. No, you'll have to plan your work in such a way. You'll have to plan your work in such a way that you are available, or you're available for this dedication. Okay, that is a core member which is there. Then we have active members, slightly notch below the core members. Okay, they work very closely with the core team, and they help and shape the definition and direction of the COP. Okay, so they could be members. Some additional members apart from the core members can be they are called as the active members which are there. Then the third category we have is occasional or floating members. These are not permanent members, but they are a floating population. Typically, any Scrum Master whom you are trying to, any person whom you are trying to mold into a role of a Scrum Master can be made as a floating member, because they will learn some of these nuances, right? They will learn from other Scrum Masters. This is the best training forum you can give to aspiring Scrum Master and Agile coaches. So those are the occasional or floating members, what we have as a part of this membership type of your community of practice which is there. Then we have what we call as peripheral members. Okay, they are on the edge. Basically, they are typically newcomers to the organization, newcomers to your project, and they are more like a casual interest. You could also bring in leaders here. You could bring in leaders as a peripheral members of the group which are there. Okay, so that's a peripheral membership which is there. And last but definitely not the least, we have transactional members. So they might be involved in one or two initiatives. For example, you want to come out with an estimation framework as a part of the COP. You might want to touch base with few of the leads, few of the leads of other applications apart from Scrum Masters. And you might want to collate data related to their projects. Those will be coming under the transactional members which are there. So these are, broadly speaking, the different types of members or membership types which are there. Okay, now any organization which is going into a community of practice, remember, it won't be a smooth journey. Okay, you will find that over a period of time, not all communities create at the same time. Okay, although this picture which I showed you earlier, it might have given you an impression that all the communities of practices are getting created at the same time, but that's rarely the case. You will always find, just like your teams, there are some community of practices which are highly matured. There are some community of practices which are on a very, very low scale of maturity which is there. Okay, so it is not that all the teams are at the same level of maturity. There always will be what we interesting models which is similar to the Tuckman's model of team building. I think you know the Tuckman's model of team building, right? Every team goes through that forming, storming, norming, performing, right? It is that Tuckman's model of team building what we have. Similarly, for our community also, this is coming from yeah, I think I lost the connection for a minute. I think I'm back again. Yeah, so I don't know what you heard me. So I was talking about the Tuckman's model of team building, and I said that similar to the Tuckman's model of team building, we have basically a COP stages of development. committing, starting up, operating, winding down, and shutting down. What I said was, I really don't believe in the last two boxes. I personally feel that COP is something which should exist. We should not shut it down. Ideally, we should not be shutting it down. So definitely committing to it, starting up, and taking it to a steady state. I would put the graph something like this rather than winding down and shutting down. Only if it is an initiative like, let us say, hackathon, and next year again we are going to form another community of practice, then this winding down and shutting down makes a sense. But if you ask me, for traditional roles like Scrum Master, Product Owner, Architects, I don't think there is a need for us to wind down or shut down the community. There's always something for the community to pick up. There are always those best practices which they can bring about. There are always those key initiatives which they can talk about, and they can do it as a part of the continuous improvement journey. So it is something which I feel there's always, we have to challenge our teams, right? If many times you hear this conversation that, you know what, we have nothing to do in a COP, or whatever were the initiatives, those initiatives have been done, right? They have already been done or they have been completed. No, as a coach, you have to find out that you have to help the teams find out that blind spot. This is also one of the dimensions of coaching, where you'll work with the COP teams. And remember, these are people who might have done very great in their transformation, and they come to you and say that, you know what, we are not getting any new initiative for our community, or our community has done whatever was supposed to be done. They have already something which has to be constantly coached, constantly challenged, is what we call as the COP, what we have. So as I said, I don't fundamentally believe in winding down and shutting down. Okay, I feel that it is a it has to continue over a period of time. Okay, so with that, I end this the presentation here, but I'm opening up the floor for any Q&A. Those of you who are on LinkedIn Live, those of you who are on YouTube, you can type in the question there. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And yeah, so we will have a question and answer time, which is there. So you can now unmute yourself. And I would also request people to come on camera. If they can come, that would really be great. If you can come on camera. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions. So now we'll go for a question and answer, if at all there are any Q&A with people. Yeah, anyone with a question and answer around this topic? Anyone would like to ask any questions or any Q&A around it? Yeah, you can unmute yourself and ask. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. Yeah, I do see there are a couple of questions on LinkedIn, but yeah, as I said, I will answer them later. I mean, later point in time, I'll definitely answer those questions. Anyone? And yeah, if you can just come on camera, we can have a nice snap so that we know that we have come here together. That also would be great if you can come on a camera. But yeah, any questions anyone has on this topic? Any questions, anyone? Feel free to unmute yourself. Yeah, Roberto, go ahead. You can ask a question. You can unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, I have a question. Is there any...
I don't know. I'm not able to hear the questions. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Well, basically, my question is there any kind of requirements that we have to follow in order to create a presentation or the workshop in the community of practice?
No, as such, it's not a prescriptive thing. I mean, as I said, let the team take a call on this. I mean, once a community of practice is established, let the team decide what best works for them. There's no guideline as such which is there. There are only some best practices which are being shared.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other question anyone has? Okay. Anyone, any questions? Yeah, I mean, this is an opportunity to ask a question. If you have any question, anyone has it. on LinkedIn Live and also on YouTube. I will answer them once the session is over. Okay. All right. So I think then we are good to close the session for the day. If there are no further questions. So thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for joining this session and patiently hearing me out. I hope this last 45 minutes were beneficial to you and you learned something new out of it. And yeah, happy Friday, happy weekend to all of you. And yeah, see you in the next happy hours of coaching session. Thank you very much and have a great weekend ahead. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks everyone. Yeah, bye.